Markets Now is brought to you by Durastack Trait Technology, the latest innovation from Syngenta. Available for the 2027 season, Durastack technology features 3 powerful modes of action to outsmart, outmaneuver, and outmatch corn rootworms every move.
And welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Mark Schultz of Northstar Commodity. Well, seeing some weakness on the ag markets this morning, with the exception of soybeans and bean oil. And Mark, let's start off talking about soybeans and bean oil because President is supposed to be in Iowa speaking this afternoon. And I think we're getting a little bit on ideas. Maybe he's going to have a announcement on 45Z or something favorable for biofuels.
Well, I think in the big picture, I think most of the ag sector is looking for something to be positive in agriculture that he'll announce, and otherwise, why would he go to Iowa? Is my comment there. So I think he's going to announce something. Obviously, it will probably favor a little bit more with bean oil. I think the bigger story gets to be is, does something happen with the corn on for the ethanol on the E15, of whether anything develops out of that or not, or whether there'll be some chatter about something coming down the road to help them out. We shall see.
Let's continue to hone in on soybeans because we are watching South American weather. We've had some forecasts now that have raised the Brazilian production estimate but lowered Argentina's soybean estimate, right?
Yeah, I think let's start with Brazil. Now, overall, the harvest is advancing. Now, it's got slowed down a little bit in this northern part because of some excessive rains in places or just pesky rains that continue on. But the yield reports continue to be very good. So there's areas that may be a little bit too wet. There's some areas that are actually getting just a little bit too dry. But the weather continues in the big scope of things to be favorable in here. So I don't see anything that is of any significance or concern in Brazil. In Argentina, there's where we start to flip a little bit. I think you've got maybe 40 to 50% of the crop still looks very good, plenty of moisture, but it is that far southern region that has got into a warmer, drier pattern here again. They put some rain in the forecast yesterday for Argentina. It looks like today that maybe some of that rain is a little bit iffy of whether that will develop or not. And we're back into some warmer weather. So not all of the models are in agreement here on the Argentine weather. So this last 50 to 60% of the crop is going to kind of start coming into a very critical time period where it needs to have an uptick in moisture and cooler temperatures to perform well. If it doesn't, it goes back to warm, it stays warm and dry, then I could see where we start to chip away at the size of the crop in Argentina.
Yeah, but it's still going to be a big crop, even if you chip a little bit away here. China, meanwhile, is already buying Brazilian soybeans at a cheaper price from what we know. Talk about how much we've heard they are buying, and is China done buying U.S. soybeans right now?
Well, in the morning report here, we had a sizable sale of grain sorghum and some corn that was also sold. No mention of any soybeans. So, yeah, we've slowed down on the bean sales, and obviously with the Chinese business. And they're going back into Brazilian beans to the tune we're hearing 20 plus cargo loads of beans that have been purchased. Does not surprise me. The soybean price in Brazil dropping to some 50 to 60, maybe even say areas of 70 cents cheaper to buy them in Brazil than it is into the U.S. So you're going to see some of that business go back into that direction. And the fact that they're into the harvest and up into that 10, 15% harvested, beans are becoming a little bit more plentiful to get at the port. So it only makes sense that they're going back down into South America to make their purchases.
For sure. Will they be completely out of the U.S. market for soybeans now until what? August, September, when?
Well, if it goes back to what he wants to start in 2026, that they're supposed to be buying 20 million metric tons or better on an annual basis, usually they start making those purchases in the late fall time or into late summer and into the early fall that they would start. China would be back into the market. So from now until probably August, maybe September, before you start seeing them return back to the United States. That's the way I would see it.
Gotcha. Technically, let's talk about soybeans because we're still under the 200-day moving average. We go up like yesterday, try to test that and then fail. And so the technical picture doesn't necessarily look good. Even yesterday it didn't, did it?
Well, yesterday's technical action was not very good at all. It looks a little bit shaky on the market. There's two areas that on the charts prior coming into this week that were leading on resistance level. The first one was at $10.69, call it 10.70 on the beans. The other one is up at 10.89 to 10.90 on the nearby March beans that you'd have to watch for the resistance areas. So if you want to change the market, you get above the 1070 doesn't surprise me, but I think you're going to get above 1089 to 1090. That's going to be the tough one. If you can clear that, then things get to be looking a little bit more optimistic on the market for the soybeans.
So Mark, let's talk about the corn and wheat market. They've been kind of hinged together here. It looked like last week we were putting in weather premium in both corn and wheat. This week we had enough put into that market, or the market is taking weather premium out? What's going on?
I think we put some weather premium into the market, but when the storm, prior to the storm over the weekend, but I think what eventually evolved there is that we ended up with some pretty good snow cover in here that blanketed the wheat before the cold temperatures set in. And that snow went a little further north than what everybody was projecting. And therefore, I think the damage is minimal at best on the wheat crop. So we took some of that premium back out of the market. In the case of the corn, of course, my view, we're still dealing with the USDA report back here in early January, which still shows significant amount of corn and the carryout hovering at pretty high levels. So I think really in the big scope of things, the corn market still isn't going to go anywhere of any significance until there's more of a weather issue. And right now we just don't have that.
Well, no, not in South America, we don't. But let's talk about, we have had a few hiccups here in terms of, we're not seeing grain movement because of the cold weather and some of the ice in some of the areas. Some of the ethanol plants and soy processing plants have also shut down, or at least slowed down here because nat gas prices have gotten so high, right?
Yeah, the natural gas market has skyrocketed in just the last 5 to 7 days here. So big moves up. So it actually, in some of the ethanol plants that are running off of natural gas, they actually can make more money selling the natural gas back and slowing down their production, making ethanol and sell the natural gas back into the market. So that has been favorable for them. And I would see that maybe slows down here just a little bit as well.
Well, no, not in South America, we don't. But let's talk about, we have had a few hiccups here in terms of, we're not seeing grain movement because of the cold weather and some of the ice in some of the areas. Some of the ethanol plants and soy processing plants have also shut down, or at least slowed down here because nat gas prices have gotten so high, right?
Yeah, the natural gas market has skyrocketed in just the last 5 to 7 days here. So big moves up. So it actually, in some of the ethanol plants that are running off of natural gas, they actually can make more money selling the natural gas back and slowing down their production, making ethanol and sell the natural gas back into the market. So that has been favorable for them. And I would see that maybe slows down here just a little bit as well. You know, this storm system was rather large. And when you get down here to the south, it's rather amazing. It's totally different than what it used to be when I lived up in Minnesota. This is not the same type of a storm system. And, you know, you look at it and say, well, it's only 2 to 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches of snow. What's the big deal? Well, it then turned into rain, and it just turned into a big sheet of white ice, and it doesn't go anywhere. You can't shovel it. You can't do anything with it. And you got to wait until it melts off. And we're just not getting warm enough to get that job done yet at the present time.
So let's talk about the cattle market. We're setting back a little bit here today, but we've run up into chart resistance. And so we're seeing some profit taking until we get cash trade development.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the storm system has raised a lot of havoc across a large portion of the U.S. and that goes all the way up into the eastern side. Now, the cattle itself, I think it's still a function of the cash market. The profit margin by the packer is still in negative territory. It depends on what he wants to do. If he stays the cash somewhat steady, which it did last week for the most part, steady, just kind of hovering around at this level. So it isn't changing too much. And it's basically what's happening with the futures. So the futures stronger yesterday. Today, they're giving back a little bit of those gains. And it's a wait and see attitude or type of market until the cash market develops. And that typically doesn't happen until Thursday or Friday at the best. So my guess is that's what we'll have to wait it out and see what the Packers are willing to do. And then the futures will react accordingly.
And you think there might be a little blip in demand just because of this storm, maybe a little lower consumption on beef?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, here in the South, obviously people stocked up at the grocery store and things like this, but businesses are closed, schools are closed. So your fast food restaurants, any type of restaurant, there's no business being done right here and hasn't been now since probably Saturday. And I can't really, looking at it, you might see a few start to open up maybe tomorrow. But until then, I would say this could take anywhere based off the way the forecast looks here for the South and the eastern part of the U.S. This may take upwards of 5 to maybe 8, 9, 10 days yet.
The flip side of this, Mark, is that weights are probably coming down on cattle just because of the weather and maybe less performance or gain, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think in the far western part of Texas and where the bulk of the cattle are, it was mostly snow, so that you can deal with. But as you keep working yourself more to the east, you're dealing with ice, snow, ice conditions, and there I just think it's a whole different scenario that's unfolded. So I think the cattle slow down dramatically on the weight gains. It's going to look like the cold is going to last longer than what they were forecasting. It doesn't warm right back on up. And I think you're just going to see feedlot conditions be a little bit tougher. And I think just the rate of gain is going to slow down rather dramatically.
Right. So when you and I started talking this morning, the hog market was seeing a little weakness. We're back to the green. So we've been on both sides of steady this morning, but it seems like every dip is bought here. That market has been super resilient, hasn't it?
That market has been more resilient than I could have imagined. It doesn't surprise me that the price is up at the levels we are in these summer months and even into the fall months. 109 to 113, I thought had great potential to eventually get there. It's just the fact that we have been going up now, and we have closed higher for working on 10 consecutive weeks to the upside. And quite frankly, we're not even making any type of moves greater than maybe $1.50 to $2 to the upside on any given day. But most of them are somewhere between this pecking away at 35 to 75 cents a day routine from the summer months going back. So it is the fact that there just isn't much of a correction, more so than anything else on this market.
Thanks so much, Mark Schultz with Northstar Commodities. That is Markets Now.
With corn rootworm costing farmers up to $1 billion a year, you need the right strategy. Introducing Durastack trait technology, featuring 3 powerful modes of action to strike corn rootworm at full force. Outsmart, outmaneuver, and outmatch their every move with the industry's first triple BT protein stack built for corn rootworm control. Take back your yield potential. Make your move at Durastack.com. Available for the 2027 season.